Hey, my friend, what's up? Did you know that there's little things that you can do that can help you optimize your health and they can have a huge impact over the course of your life? My guest calls them health compounding, and there's many of these free ways for you to start optimizing your health now. My guest today is Tim Gray, and he's the UK's leading biohacker, and he also hosts the Health Optimisation Summit in London. I asked him for a lot of free ways to help you optimize your health. We discuss managing stress, improving sleep, getting or having more energy, even touch on thyroid deficiency and what to do about it. Tim shares how he approaches all these areas, and I love his foundational approach. He starts with the basics every single time. For example, wearing these blue light blocking glasses is a prime example of what I can do to stop or block the blue light coming into my eyes at night, which tells my body that it's time to go to bed, and therefore giving me deeper and more restful sleep. So again, simple biohack that anybody can do. If you're enjoying these episodes, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button below, and also share this with others who you think may benefit from this information. Our goal is to help you look and feel younger and live your most confident and adventurous life. All right, let's get right into the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. Today my guest is Tim Gray, who is known as the UK's leading biohacker due to his detailed tracking of more than 35 plus biomarkers per day. He's frequently in the mainstream media regarding practical, trackable, and immediately applicable health hacks. After years spent self-optimizing his body from chronic health conditions through biohacking alone, Tim embarked on a mission to educate and empower the masses. He created the Health Optimization Summit, Europe's largest health conference, which aims to provide people with the knowledge, tools, and resources to take their own health and performance to the next level. I'm really excited about this conversation. With that said, Tim, welcome to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So you are quite the expert biohacker, and you started this movement in the UK quite a few years ago, but your history goes back much further than that. So would you please walk the audience into or talk about how you got started into biohacking and how that ended up to where you are, what you do today?
Sure. For me, it began about 10 years ago, 2010, 2011. Successful, quote unquote, business guy, running multiple companies, waking up in the morning, going to the office, doing the second company in the evening, getting home, eating something, jumping straight into bed, wash, rinse, and repeat. That was basically it. I saw sickness or illness as a weakness and just thought it was something that my staff did when they needed an excuse to not come into work. So I really didn't understand sickness. And then I went traveling to Bali, and I had some jabs before I went, and various other things as well. And I recently started bloating while eating pasta, thinking pasta was healthy or whatever. And when I came back, I got some kidney stones, and one got stuck in a ureter, which was just hell. And when I said to the doctors afterwards, why do I get kidney stones? He just said, just avoid oxalates and drink more water. Anyway, for the space of a year, I was producing more and more kidney stones. It had become quite a stressor for me. I was chronically stressed as a result of it, and things started spiraling from there, really. I started getting kidney infections, urinary tract infections. All the brain fog kicked in, bloating got worse. I was on antibiotics for 3 months, and health started deteriorating. And this went on for over a year. And then the final piece of the puzzle for me was I got thrush around a filling in my mouth. And so I Googled thrush and metal fillings, as you do, and it came up with mercury poisoning. So I got a hair mineral analysis test done and realized that actually I had ridiculously high mercury levels. So I'd been into the doctors. He didn't know any of this stuff. He said everything looks fine on the tests that he did. And, they only have a certain amount of tests that they can do, and it's nothing functional. So he shrugged his shoulders and said, Tim, I can't find anything wrong. I decided to go home, got Post-it notes, mapped out all the symptoms and different things I had all over the wall, like a crazy, crazy person, and linked it back to the mercury causing the immune issues, as well as the gut, stress level, and whatnot along the way. So anyway, I just looked at it like a problem solution scenario, like it was a business issue, and started fixing things one by one. Obviously, I had chronic fatigue ongoing for a long time and fixing the gut for a long time, and various different things that went on along the way. But really, it told me that the doctors didn't know everything. When they said just drink more water and avoid oxalates, it didn't really seem to make sense. And I just kind of went, I've had enough. So I just carried on researching and carried on applying. And when I realized that I could be so much more effective and perform better than I have ever realized before I even got ill, it kind of became not an addiction, but kind of like, those days where you operate so well, like maybe you run a little bit more in the gym and you just feel amazing for it. You don't feel fatigued. Your brain is on fire. You can work out the sums or just get your head around stuff and feel like almost that you can run circles around people because you're just so alive. That is what I felt I got to. And I wanted to make that consistent. And then one day someone mentioned to me about bulletproof coffee and putting coconut oil and butter in it. And I was just like, what is this? And I didn't understand the science. I didn't understand anything about it. I just knew that this is what you should do. I did it. Next thing I know, it's 2:00 in the afternoon. I had worked solidly through from about 8 a.m. without even blinking, and realized that this stuff worked. So then I listened to Bulletproof Radio, listened to some of Dave Asprey's work, heard about hyperbaric oxygen therapy, tried that out, loved it. Couldn't get it locally, opened a Hyperbaric Clinic in London, London's first private one, which I've now sold. Found out Hyperbaric was just so amazing. It's classed as an amazing biohack. And then I guess really went from there. I got to know the Bulletproof guys in the States, went to the conference, loved it, came back to London. There was no community here at all. Decided to create a meetup group, which grew quite big, quite quickly, to about 500 people in 3 months. And then the linchpin, I guess, in this is my background's marketing and psychology. I've been doing that for a very, very, very long time. I'd lost kind of love for it because it wasn't helping the world in any way. It was just helping people sell more products. And then I said to my mum one day, I've created a group and I've got 500 biohackers. And she said, what's that, Tim? And I said, it's kind of people that optimize their health. She says, well, why don't you call it something like that? And I was like, the thing is, well, from a marketing perspective, biohacking is funky. It's a very good label. It makes it fashionable, but a lot of people don't understand it. So I did a survey on Oxford Street, and this is where I round off on my journey, but I feel like it's relevant building to this point. We surveyed people on Oxford Street. Less than 0.1% of people said they wanted to biohack themselves, let alone knew what it was. 95% of people said they wanted to optimize their health. 4% of people said a loved one, not themselves. And 1% were just rude, busy London people pushing out the way that didn't give a shit. So really that told me that biohacking is amazing. It's really started something insanely good, but people don't understand it. So really, that's why I moved the meetup group to be Biohacker and Health Optimization and started the Health Optimization Summit. And it's all just gone from there.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You started the meetup group in 2017, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And, I joined the LA meetup group, Biohacking meetup group in about, I believe it was 2018 or 2019, but I'd been, flirting with biohacking coffee and read some articles on Reddit about how people were changing their biology by changing their inputs into the body. And so I was really fascinated. And I've got a, technology, tech coding background, and the hacks really got me. So yeah, it's really interesting. Now, I want you to explain the Health Biohacking or Health Optimization Summit that you pulled together with some of the industry heavyweights a couple of years ago. It was in 2019, it was the first one, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
What is the summit all about?
Well, really, so there's a Bulletproof conference in the States, and there's PaleoFX, and there's all the different conferences. And in America, it's very normal to have big scale conferences with a tribe or, high energy, Tony Robbins style, whatnot. So Bulletproof conference was really eye opener for me. And there's a few smaller little conferences around Europe in biohacking, but they generally have 300 to 500 people, no more. Didn't necessarily quite have the same vibe, and it was very, very niche. So I just wanted to recreate, but give it a bit more of a European spin. So I invited, and it was a lot of work, 40 of the key world speakers. So Dave Asprey, obviously, John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus for relationship optimization. We had Ben Bukowski, who's a now turned biohacker from bodybuilding, very well known in this space. We had Sean Wells, our mutual friend, actually speaking about nootropics and keto diet. Also, Dr. Harry Adelson, full body stem cell, John Aubrey de Grey, main man behind the whole longevity space, I guess. And the list goes on. I mean, it was just like a dream lineup, even for American standards, but in London. So, and then we had 50 exhibitors, curated brands, ones that I use personally, none that, I hadn't used or implemented in my life. So there's kind of an assurance behind it that they were of good quality. And then we drew 1,164 people in year one. But that was mainly, I think, because the branding, health optimization, the speakers, but also because because it's health optimization, we could target health, fitness, medical, wellness, nutrition, biohacking, paleo, keto, all of these spaces, and say, look, here's your tribe, let's come together because we all want better health. So that's really what it was. And it turned out to be a pretty epic event. The second year was planned 2020, but obviously we've kicked that out to May 2022 now, just because of the Rona.
Yeah. No, I heard very good things about the Health Optimization Summit in 2019. I couldn't make it, so I'm looking forward to attending a future one and hanging out with you and shaking your hand. Before we dive into biohacking, Tim, I've got a few questions for you. I wanted to ask, because Americans get a bad rap, right? It's the standard American diet. It's like we're eating like pigs, right? And I do believe that Europeans do eat healthier than Americans, but I cannot say that for the UK because I don't know, other than fish and chips, I don't know what people eat there. So sorry for my ignorance, but in your perspective, and when you talk to people in the US and UK and Europe, what are some of the health differences or health conditions that you come across that may be different across the continents?
I think in terms of American to English and European, England is in between America and the rest of Europe. So I see America as very commercialized, product driven in any way, shape or form. Everyone can make it if you bring out the right product. And because there's just so many people, like for instance, in England, we have one variant of kefir. You go into Erewhon or Whole Foods and you have 50, right. 50 brands, 10 flavors. Everything is to the extreme and it's in abundance. Whereas in England, we're a little bit more reserved. You might have one, maybe two. Mm-hmm. If you go to Europe, kefir will be there because that's something they've used for years, but they don't have proper branded ones. It would be local farm stuff. There won't be 20 variants or other flavors. It would just be one. That's it. And they use it for the whole country pretty much. So I see England as America's little brother, I guess. So with that is America is more extreme. It's bigger. Everything's bigger. The hotels are 10 times the size. Everything's more extreme. There's 10 times the amount of adverts in, every 5 minutes. Whereas in England, you get it every half an hour and you just get 4 minutes of them. Everything's just a bit more. Whereas in Europe, it's a little bit more chilled. They're nearer to the food being created, such as in Italy, the tomatoes are grown there and the grapes for the wine and all these things. Whereas in England, it's pretty much good for nothing except for potatoes, I think. Thus the fish and chips. So I think the further we go away from nature, the more disease we have. And an example would be, for instance, milk. Actually, I shared a post out on Instagram today about plant-based milk versus cow milk. And people say, well, dairy doesn't work for me, it's not good. But the thing is, if it wasn't pasteurized and homogenized, it would have the right bacteria profile and also the right amino acid is left in it and so it's damaged, which means that our guts wouldn't necessarily get intolerances to it because our body had the right bacteria to break it down, for instance. That's just one example. Versus plant-based, that is 2% almond, 98% other stuff. And instead of just fixing the reason why you can't have the milk, you change to plant-based milk, which actually has got more chemicals in and takes us further away from nature and actually ends up causing more issues long term. And if you're living in the city and you're not grounding, for instance, you're far away from nature, the air isn't as good and all the things. So if we get back to nature, as close to nature as our ancestors would have, that would be better. I see America, for the most part, being much more industrialized or further away from nature, for the most part, not everywhere, granted. Whereas in Europe, it's a lot more natural cities are smaller, they're a lot older, they're much near parks, they're protected buildings that can't be knocked down, and new blocks that aren't just ripped down and rebuilt and stuff like that. So I think that's really why, and I see England between Europe and America in the health regards as well as commercially. So for instance, type 2 diabetes in UK is significantly less than it is in America, and is lower in Europe, I believe, than it is in the UK. And I think that's twofold. One, because of diet and lifestyle being a lot more relaxed and more natural, but two, also because of the commercialized side of things. You guys advertise drugs on TV, so you go and ask your doctors for them. We're not allowed that over here.
Yeah, the marketers are running all the product sales in America, and love them or hate them, they're front and center in your minds. And mostly, I don't want to talk bad about them, but there's some ethical ones and some maybe not that could improve their trade a bit. Anyway,
just to be clear before we move on, I love America. I love being in America, and I spend as much time there as I possibly can. I'm over there as much as I can pre-COVID. So I don't have anything against it at all. In fact, some of my best mates are across the States, many of them in Austin and LA. I do think that the ones that, let's say that they're woke, and then I'm not talking about, anti or pro guys. I'm talking about the ones that understand that living in nature and having a field in the back garden opposed to living in the city, the ones that get it. And I think that they're more extreme than England in that regard as well. And I think it's starting to spread out. You can see the amount of people that moved out of LA since lockdowns and gone to Austin, and Austin is kind of like an oasis for health and nature. So just to be clear, I'm very pro America.
Yeah. Next time you come out here, we'll have to hang out, because I'm between Austin and LA for the most part, and we've got some common friends as well. So Tim, this is an anti-aging show, so I want to ask you some of the biohacks for anti-aging. And obviously the 4 pillars in my mind are: you got to get the right sleep, you got to get the right nutrition, you got to exercise, and you got to keep your stress levels down. And we've talked a lot about a lot of these modalities and how to do that, but I'd like to get your perspective on stress in particular. What, you've been through it all. You're a busy executive, and you still are. What do you do to tackle stress, manage it, and preface that with, what is stress doing in our bodies that is so bad for us?
Wow, that's a great question. Really, really good question, actually. Stress is a very clever thing, actually. And I think every behavior or action has a positive intention for our bodies. Okay. And I'll give you an example. If we didn't get stressed and we didn't have to run away from something, then we'd probably get eaten. Ancestrally, I'm talking. So, for instance, when we are stressed, and bearing in mind ancestrally, the main stresses would be animals trying to capture us, or getting enough food for our family. So we wouldn't necessarily have all the day-to-day stresses, this email from our boss, or whether or not we can afford to pay the electricity, or whatever it may be. We're in a heightened state where we're stressed all the time. Now, stress there shuts down so many different things in the body. It rediverts blood flow. It means that our digestion shuts down, so that we're ready to run away, so that our muscles are ready to run. The key thing here is that actually, as a result, the digestion shuts down, which means we don't digest our food properly or as well. We then don't get the nutrients from our food, which means we become deficient in nutrients, on top of our food being farmed and having less nutrients than they did 50 or 100 years ago. Means that we don't have the nutrients, and we don't have the energy, and we don't repair properly, and we're always running away from an animal, or running away from a threat. So that means that our cortisol will be higher, obviously, which means our blood sugar will be higher, because that goes up when we are stressed. You can see that very clearly when you track the glucose around the clock. Which means that instead of sleeping and repairing properly, we will be digesting food through the night, because we probably would have eaten later as well, which instead of using all our energy to repair, we're using our energy to process the food that we're eating. And apparently up to 30% of our energy can be used to digest food. So therefore, not only are we not getting the nutrients, we're not repairing properly because we're not sleeping properly. So it has a whole host of like compound theory, I guess, of just these tiny little things. And then when you put the final piece of the puzzle on this is we're drinking tap water or low mineral water, which means that our adrenals aren't supported, which means that we're stressed in that regard as well. So we're in sympathetic opposed to parasympathetic mode, which means that our adrenals are stressed and then we end up having burnout. So, and then you look on the flip side of, let's have a look at, for instance, parents. They have a run of 3 kids in a row over the space of 4 or 5 years. They're chronically undersleeping. They age super fast versus, say, for instance, a 40-year-old that is a bachelor. I'm 42 now. I haven't got kids, and I get told I look younger than my age quite frequently. But the point is that the lack of sleep and interrupted sleep ages us very quickly. So what we can learn from that is respecting our sleep as much as we possibly can is the number one thing we can do for longevity. And because it's not just sleep. And then to optimize your sleep, I look as circadian optimization based on Dr. Sachin Panda's work as well as others. But it's optimizing your day to optimize your night, which optimizes longevity and performance. And so it's really like a knock-on effect from that.
Gotcha. Awesome. Let's move on to another question that I get sometimes, and this is about nutrition, one of the other pillars of longevity or anti-aging. And, you know, the more we learn about the world and the more we track data, we now are coming to understand that everybody is unique. They're different. Their gut microbiome is different. The way they react to foods is different. Their stress levels are different. And so there isn't one size fits all when it comes to diet. And at the same time, there's people that have allergies to a lot of foods and they don't know it for a long time. Is there a way or what would be a way for people to figure out what foods are most suitable to them without spending thousands of dollars in testing for allergens, for example?
Can you say that again? Sorry, the question.
Yeah. So what would be one way for people to figure out the foods that are suitable to them without doing thousands of dollars in testing?
Okay. So the number one is what tastes the best to you. And I'm not talking about manufactured food because it's manipulated so it tastes great. That's one of the things that food companies do very well. Add sugars to it so it tastes good to us. It tricks us. It's like, one of my friends, Dr. Dominic Nichwitz, always says to his kids it's basically that is poo with sugar rolled on it so that it tastes good. You are eating poo, which is very, very true. I mean, it puts the kids off eating rubbish. Great strategy. But really, it's number one is to trust your taste on the assumption that it's fruit, vegetables, meat, and dairy. Clean dairy, not factory dairy. So that's number one. Because, if you put down, for instance, I actually shared this out a few weeks ago. I was sitting outside eating some grass-fed beef, and with it, for some reason, came some bread. So there was a cat walking around the table. So I threw the bread down. It wouldn't go near it. I threw a piece of meat down and the cat went straight after it. And so anyway, I left it 5 minutes. I threw a bit more bread down, didn't have it, bit of beef down, ran after it. And, if you put margarine, sunflower margarine in the garage, ants, creatures won't go near it. You put butter down and it will. Animals are intuitive. They say that we're the most intelligent ones, but we're also the most stupid ones of all. Animals won't go near things that has no nutritional value in it for them. Very rarely anyway. So we should trust our intuition, number one. The other thing is for instance, depending on your gut, if you bloat with certain foods, that's an indicator that it doesn't agree with you for some reason. Or if your stools are looser with certain foods, that's another indication. These are all like little pointers that tells us that something's not quite right. So the typical way is just to avoid something that affects you, but really you can avoid it. That sorts a symptom out, but really you need to figure out why it's affecting you in the first place. So for instance, with me, I couldn't really eat much fatty meat for quite some time. So I avoided eating fatty meats. And the symptom is, floating stools and not necessarily healthy gut. And so I looked into why that might be. And for me, it was liver stress. my liver was stressed because it was processing so many toxins. It needed a cleanse and various other things. So I cut meat out, fatty meat, for a while, and then I supported my digestion. And then I added in ox bile, then I added in livers, and now I can digest fatty foods very easily, and I can eat dairy again without any problems. So really, those are, symptoms are messengers telling us that something needs to be observed better, not just to be shut up or avoid something. So that would be the first thing. Obviously, allergy testing is great. I mean, it is not necessarily super accurate, but it is expensive. But if you don't want to spend money on testing, then that's definitely the best way to judge it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And thanks for making it so simple that anybody can follow some of the tips you shared. I've been playing around with a chest strap, a polar chest strap, to kind of sense my heartbeats or heart rate after I eat meals. And they say that's one way of figuring out if you have allergies. And when I ate eggs, and these are pasteurized, very expensive eggs, I was eating those every morning, and I would notice that my heart rate was going up. So I'm backing off that for a little while, and then I'll incorporate those later. But again,
have you tracked your blood glucose with a constant glucose monitor by any chance?
I have. I do it every few months. I'd been off the eggs when I did that, so I got to incorporate the eggs back when I do it the next time.
Yeah. So the reason being is that, for instance, if I have sweet potato that comes from America, my blood glucose will spike like crazy.
Really?
If I have it from Europe, Spain specifically is the one that I used in the tests, I don't spike it in the same way. Now, if there are toxins or pesticides, for instance, in the veg, then you will mobilize glycogen, and you will notice it in your blood glucose. So sometimes if it's the same food from different sources, you will see that in your blood glucose spike. Also, you'll see it in your heart rate. So if you're monitoring it, which is great. So for instance, I see my heart rate increase by 3 to 5 beats a minute when I'm having the American sweet potato versus the Spanish, and I'll see my blood glucose spike like crazy. So, and then that's reflected in my readiness score and sleep score and everything like that. So I mean, there are these diagnostic things you can do. Exactly right. Saying about your heart rate.
Is there any hope for us Americans with the food being laced by everything out there?
Well, I mean, organic, as natural as you can.
Yeah.
I mean, always the rule. But the other thing is one thing that people often say to me on my social, on Instagram is, "Oh, Tim, it's so expensive to eat healthy or be healthy these days." Actually, every single thing we have spoken about so far has been free or almost free. And if you're filling up your basket with just fruit, just veg, just the best cuts of meat and fresh wild caught fish, those individual items are going to be expensive. But what's more expensive is if you start buying bags of chips at $6, all the different sauces, the guacamole, or, especially if you go to Erewhon, everything's over $25. Basically. But the point is just fruit, vegetables, meats, and fish. While they may appear expensive, the basket is only super expensive. You're adding all these products with barcodes in, so it can actually be cheap to eat naturally. But the problem is everyone eats packets, or they say, "Oh, I eat for convenience and I get organic food sent in a packet meal for me ready to microwave," which is just mind-blowing. So I don't think it's necessarily an issue, even in America. I don't think so at all.
Okay. All right, let's move on to improving our energy. As we know, energy is the foundation of everything. Our body needs ATP to do its job. The cells need energy to do their job, which is to maintain homeostasis in our bodies. And homeostasis, if it's balanced properly when you're younger, leads to just young and vibrant individuals. As we get older, we start to lose the homeostasis, which is the cell can't do its job. Therefore, external aggressors, oxidative stress, inflammation start to gain a foothold, and therefore reduce the function of the cell, which leads to aging, visible signs of aging on the skin, but also internally, which you can't see. You have to use diagnostics to measure some of that. So Tim, what might be some free or even advanced tips for energy that people can use to actually notice a difference in their life?
Well, I'm going to go back to the sleep quickly, and I won't press on that point too much, but if you've had a bad night of sleep or no sleep, your energy is the worst ever. It will be. I mean, it's just, that's number one. So the first thing that we should tackle is always optimizing the sleep as best as you possibly can. Number one thing to do is to track. So I love the Oura Ring. You can use Apple Watch, you can use Whoop Band, you can use any one of the, there's a whole host of them. They're all popping out everywhere at the moment. So number one would be to be diagnostic with your sleep and, see what your sleep score is. Start wearing blue blocking glasses after sunset. Stop eating food after sunset. Have a small glass of water with added sea salt or Himalayan rock salt in it before bed, just to support your body. So it's got the building blocks it needs to help repair during the night. Just change one thing at a time and see how you can improve your sleep score to get it to as high as you can. And for me, the things that are non-negotiables, if I had to drop everything in biohacking immediately, except for one thing, it would be my blue blocking glasses after sunset. It's a non-negotiable, absolutely none. Even if I've got lucky, and I will wear them. To put it that way. So that's how non-negotiable they are, because the difference I see in my readiness and sleep score is significant. It's like 20 to 30% from not wearing them. So anyone that they say, well, I don't use my device after 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Very rare, but they do say that. It's household lighting as well. Any fake lighting other than moonlight at night. So that really interferes. So that's the number one thing you can do. The other thing is, I would say make sure that you hydrate properly. And obviously the body is electrical. The main times that the medical system cares about the electrical system is, number one is if your heart stops, they get the defib on you. And number two is if you're seriously dehydrated, they'll put an IV into you. Apart from that, they don't really seem to care too much about the electrical system. Well, minerals are electrolytes. Electrolytes are our wiring for our body. If we're deficient in our wiring, then our electrical utilization or electric utilization won't be as good as it should be. So you can be putting enough food and enough of the right nutrients in, but you won't be transporting the energy properly. So therefore, things like mental clarity drops significantly. In fact, by 5% dehydration, with 5% dehydration, you can be up to 30% less cognitive abilities. So it's really important. And so most water is deficient in minerals because it's bottled water just from the stream, which is why you should always add, half a teaspoon of Celtic salt to every glass of water, or should I, 2 or 3 times a day minimum. That helps obviously your cognition, your energy, your repair while you sleep and things. So those would be the main things. The final one that I would say, other than sunlight or getting enough light exposure, bearing in mind we evolved with natural light on us, not being in a blue lit house or office all day, every day. So enough natural light, obviously sunlight hits the skin and converts our cholesterol into hormones, basically, which obviously is all about energy and many other functions. So if you're not getting enough natural light, then you're not going to operate properly. And most people see the inside of their car, the inside of their office, and hardly outside at all, especially during lockdown when we're told to not go outside. Then the final thing that I would say, other than the obvious with nutrition, is grounding. And I talk about grounding a lot. I would say I'm tagged in it 10, 15 times a day at the moment, just because I thought grounding was woo-woo. And I say this so much, it's funny, it feels disingenuous saying it again, but I thought it was woo-woo until I tested it on myself. I measured the electrical charge in my body from it and used it over a period of 6 months or so before actually talking about it. And it's just the final piece of the electrical circuitry for our body. When we touch the ground, we get a flow of free electrons from the ground, which scavenges free radicals, which helps our whole body work as it should do. We didn't evolve with rubber shoes on, which breaks the circuitry. So that's why when you swim in the sea, for instance, your stress levels drop significantly. So people with anxiety, brain fog, or panic attacks, for instance, when they sit cross-legged on the grass, after a few minutes, their nervous system calms down, they become very relaxed, and it's easy to meditate on the grass as well. So there's a whole, these things stacked together by compound theory actually have a massive output. I find that people that have been on my course, just to do a shameless plug in there, but this is, I have over 200 people on my course now that implement the fundamentals of health, these basic biohacks. Find that doing one helps a little bit, second one helps a little bit more, but really when they've applied the seven main topics, that they really do have a major shift just because compound theory.
Absolutely. Love those tips. I do a daily walk in the afternoon after lunch, and I'll typically take my shirt off to get some of the sunlight on my body. And I live near a golf course. I used to until recently. And so I'd walk on the edge of the golf course, not in the middle where there's all these chemicals they put in, but on the edge of the golf course and kind of up on a hill. And I'd walk so that I was doing my balance. I was getting a walk, and I'd do it after lunch. So I'm reducing my glucose in the bloodstream as I'm doing that as well. And I'm getting my grounding in. So this was, like, as you said, multiple biohacks in one movement. In 20 minutes, you've knocked out 4 things, and you do it 2 or 3 times a day. You're looking pretty good. And so, thank you for those tips. Let's touch on skin aging. Tim, you mentioned your age, and you look vastly younger than your physical age. And so is it just an output of you not having kids and not having the stress to deal with the kids and waking up to take care of them? Or are you doing other stuff for your skin as well?
Skin starts from the inside. If someone has dry skin, which I used to have really bad dry skin for years, actually, really bad, like peeling off every day, and I'd have to use really expensive creams that are supposed to be amazing, blah, 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 blah. It starts from the inside out. So people with the worst eczema, for instance, someone in my family has really bad eczema, hands cracking up like crazy and bleeding. We removed household bleaches and cleaning products. We stopped him having dairy products, traditional farm dairy products, not raw, that's fine. And the eczema, lifelong eczema reversed. So any skin blemishes and things like that, if you support the liver so it can detoxify properly and balance the hormones properly, spots, acne, and blemishes generally go fairly quickly, actually. So that's really that one thing. The other thing is that this is the thing with my mother, and I tested this on myself for a long time, is that I'd had chronic frequent urination, where I'd pee, 30 to 50 times a day. And, the more I drank, the more that came out, and I couldn't seem to reduce it. And I was always thirsty. Turns out I was deficient in certain minerals just because of the mercury that I mentioned earlier on. It competes with the cell. So by adding in potassium, actually, it helped me retain the water better, and it stopped me peeing so many times. That's a really good hack that people that pee more than 10 or 15 times a day can do. Try some potassium gluconate. You can get it on Amazon for $6. But the thing is, the byproduct of that is because you're holding onto your fluids as you should do, not too much and not too little, your skin becomes more hydrated. And after about 3 weeks of my mum using potassium glycinate, she's like, I can't believe it. My hands are the softest they've ever been, and I don't use the cream anymore. So a lot of it is about hydration. The other one is I use a lot of collagen. I actually use fish-based collagen and beef-based collagen, some in my coffee, some in my, like for instance, if I make a dessert, sweet potato pudding using collagen, and all these things. And I use digestive enzymes, proteolytic ones, which break down the proteins. So it helps repair skin and wounds and things like that. So I think, again, the hydration is super important, and using Celtic sea salt, as I talk about so much, is key to this, balancing the minerals, because if you're not having enough minerals, you won't retain the water or eject the water correct. And retaining it means, in the right quantities, means that more hydrated, obviously. So that helps the skin. And then obviously things like the enzymes and the collagen, really, again, compound theory, stacking. I think it's stacking biohacks. These little things on their own won't make much difference, but when you stack them all together, they really make a huge difference. And I think whenever I talk about that, I think about sort of Warren Buffett talking about compound interest. So if you invest $1,000 a month every month, and you get 10% year on year on year, and how it ends up being 15 million that you've saved in no time. But if you look at one of those charts, it shows you compound theory in effect, and I think that is absolutely pivotal in stacking your biohacks. So for my skin, I mean, it's not particularly great light here. I'm in Croatia at the moment. I've been traveling for 4 months, working remotely, getting a lot of sun, and the lighting in here is pretty shoddy, but it really looks great actually compared to normal even.
Mm-hmm.
So it really does help doing all of these things and not just doing it for a few days and then saying, oh, it doesn't work, and then dropping it and going back into your old habits. It's like consistency, atomic habit style.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, I do this Celtic sea salt every morning in my water, and I'm a huge fan of getting the minerals in your body that it needs to do its job, and the wiring that you mentioned. Let's touch on a different question that I get. Oh, by the way, before we get on this, the potassium is a great hack. I've heard from men that complain about urinating too much, and especially waking up 2 or 3 times at night to urinate, which immediately, reduces the quality of their sleep. So that might be a hack for them to sleep uninterrupted through the night. I will be sure to recommend this to them. Thanks for sharing. The next one I wanted to ask you was about, I also hear about folks with thyroid deficiencies, and it seems to be more women that complain about having lower thyroid than men, but it could be 50-50 for all I know. But the current tests that we get in the US with your medical professional, the standard TSH test isn't enough. You have to get a bit deeper. You have to get the thyroid panel, to get the T3, reverse T3, T4, to really understand the picture of what's happening with thyroid. What have you seen or come across, and what might you recommend for people that are maybe struggling with thyroid?
It really depends. Like, for instance, I hear a lot of times vegans, for instance, have damaged thyroids. And there's certain things in I can't say it now. Cruciferous. I can't say, I'm tongue-tied.
Cruciferous.
Thank you very much. Amazing. I love it. So that can damage the thyroid if you have them in too frequently. But so there's an area of that I've seen in vegans. But one thing I think the bigger issue for it, and I speak from personal experience with this as well, and with people that are on my course and people that I've consulted with, and questions that come in frequently on my Instagram, is that a lot of these people that have thyroid issues, lower thyroid, often have the MTHFR gene SNP. Now, my experience was that I had a low thyroid. It was measured, okay-ish with the doctors. And he said, it's a bit low. My body temperature is low, quite low. And in the UK, we measure obviously in degrees Celsius, and it was 36.3 instead of 37. So any American guys listening to this, you'd have to convert that. But I tried everything, and I ended up hearing that once you get on thyroid meds, you don't come off them. So I tried Armour Thyroid, which is the crushed pig's thyroid glands, and it has the same ratio of T1 to T2, T3, T4 in them. So people that often have been on thyroxine or other thyroid meds do very well on Armour Thyroid because it's natural. So I thought, I'm going to interject here and I'm going to use these. It worked really well until I went too high. And then, I remember standing, talking to someone in a meeting, and sweat was dripping off my hand because my body was just so hot. I mean, it's just like, I realized I had to dial it down. And then I heard about MTHFR, and I said to a practitioner, Marek Doyle on Instagram, he's Marek Doyle Nutrition, very, very, very good guy. And he said to me, well, let's try MTHFR. Let's try and optimize that and see if we can get you off the thyroid meds. This is a long time ago. So I came off my thyroid meds within a week. And I'm not saying anyone should, by the way, but so MTHFR covers so many different processes in the body. And it raised my body temperature back up to 36.8, so almost to exactly the mark. And I measured it 3 or 4 times every day, tracked it on a chart every day, averaged it out every day, tried different supplements to see what would raise my body temperature, what would make my body temperature more stable, etc. And having a stable body temperature day on day says that your adrenals aren't stressed. And if it's up and down every other day, then your adrenals are stressed. And if your body temperature is low, your thyroid's low. And if your body temperature is high, it can be your thyroid's high. So I was very, very specific in my tracking, adding in the B12, methylfolate, and trimethylglycine in the right amounts based on my genes. I could come off in a week. So a lot of people I speak to actually have the same thing if they have a lower thyroid, is optimizing their B12 and methylfolate. Now, one of the curveballs here is a lot of practitioners, when they test and they say, well, actually, you've got high B12 levels. You don't need to supplement with it. But when you look, they've got the MTHFR SNP. What's happening with these guys are, and actually posted about it this week on a vegan post that got me a lot of pushback, was that if you have high B12 in your blood and you're not supplementing with it, why would that be? Well, it's because you're not utilizing the B12 you're getting, so it's flowing around opposed to being utilized. So that's often an indicator that you do need to work on your B12 methylfolate and trimethylglycine and work on your methylation. And that will help bring up your body temperature and help resolve thyroid, potentially. It's not every case, but it is a good portion of them in my experience, which obviously brings up your energy, helps your sleep, helps so many different areas of your life, helps your mood. And if you see, actually, I saw a picture earlier on between someone that was low thyroid and normal thyroid, and the difference in how they looked was just incredible. And that's the only thing they changed, an isolated test. So that's where I would explore. So if you haven't had your genes tested and you think you have got a low thyroid, or your energy is low, or you can't lose weight easily, even though you're fasting and things, I would get your genes checked for the MTHFR gene and work with a practitioner to get that worked on.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tim. That's a great recommendation. We're coming up on time, so I wanted to ask you about your next Health Optimization Summit. I believe you mentioned the date is next May now.
Yes.
So tell us about the date, and also tell us about the course that you're offering individuals.
So it's the end of May next year. And
in London?
Yes, in London, yeah. So we're the biggest health conference in Europe in this area. Maybe even in the world, depending on the numbers that Dave gets at his upgrade conference this month. 100 exhibitors, 50 speakers, 1,500 people, workshops, talks, a healthy, low alcohol, biodynamic, organic, natural wine from Dry Farm Wines even, which is amazing, party. Whole host of things, and meet your tribe. So if you're from America and you want to come on over, meet loads of your European counterparts and have an amazing time, and maybe even have a train trip to Paris. It's 2 hours from London at the same time. So that's May. And in terms of the course, on my Instagram, it's grown from 2,000 people last February to nearly 70 now. And I see the patterns in the questions I get, and so many people are asking, where do I start? What do I do? I don't know what to do, in what order. What do I need to get right? What supplement should I take for this, that, and the other? And so really I put together a course of the fundamentals of health, of what you should do before you start spending money on supplements, before you start buying technologies at $600 or whatever, and before buying these detox juices from Erewhon. And stuff, and just shooting in the dark, and basically what it runs through is just like circadian, as we discussed, in terms of optimizing your sleep, what you can do, how you can track it, and the little things you can implement to really improve that. Optimizing your hydration, when, how, what, and to do. Optimizing your sun and light, that includes blocking junk light as well as utilizing natural light as well. Grounding and nature, how to implement it into your day so that you don't spend loads of time doing all this stuff. Optimizing your breathing and oxygen, and that goes in, also talks about hyperbaric oxygen therapy as well. The mindset of nutrition, things like we talked about, how to diagnose, or should I say not diagnose, but how to navigate what to eat and what not to eat from the mindset point of view. And it's not saying avoid eggplant and eat this instead. It's really is mindset stuff. Optimizing your oral health, because what goes in here goes in everywhere else. And if you've got a bad gut, you should really look at the mouth. And that includes things like mercury fillings or root canal treated teeth and things like that. And then community and relationships, and how to optimize that as well. So it's really cost you nothing to implement any of these things. Cost you £299. It's about 350-ish bucks. For 10 days, permanent access. We've got a Slack channel community where there's over 200 members that talk all the time and support you, as well as bi-weekly calls with me for any support you need as well. So it has done much better than I anticipated, just because I think so many people now during COVID and post-COVID don't know where to start and don't know what to do to really support themselves. And, a lot of us guys like you and I, know about walking barefoot or know to put Celtic sea salt, but these guys just don't know what order to do what. So it's just really holding exercise, and feedback's been great.
Fantastic. And Tim, what is your Instagram handle?
Tim Biohacker, all one word.
So Tim Biohacker, that's easy. It's the UK's leading biohacker. He's doing great things, hosting one of the largest conferences in the world in health. So, Tim, thank you so much for coming on the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thanks for having me.